Hello and welcome to my Yu-Gi-Oh channel. So today we've got new cards which are new at Ignista cards from Lightning Overdrive. I'm going to feature them. They were revealed as of a special Japanese broadcast. When I first met you is the normal spell card, and the effect is you can only activate one card with this card's name per turn. 1. Reveal one Cyberse monster with 2,300 attack in your hand or extra deck. And if you do, add one at Ignista monster with the same attribute from your deck to your hand. Also, you cannot activate monster effects for the rest of this turn after this card resolves, except Cyberse monsters. During the end phase, if you did not special summon the revealed monster or a monster with the same name this turn, you take 2,300 points of damage. This is good for actually being a rotor for the deck. It does rely on you bringing out certain monsters and meeting certain conditions, but I'm sure with the Ignistas, they do have various different cards that meet that condition anyway, so it's not a problem. There are a lot of Cyberse monsters out there in the game, but the downside is if you don't fail to summon the monster or a monster with the same name, you do take that amount of damage, 2,300 points. There is a monster, there is a card which has the same kind of effect for level 1s. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. If you do remember it, please put that down in the comments below. But basically what it says is if you fail to summon that level 1 monster by the end of the turn, you take 2,000 points of damage. So this is quite similar to how that works. It's just to add consistency really, and I think it's a good idea that they have something like that. The next card is Dark Infant at Ignista. It's a Link 1 Dark Attribute Cyberse type Link monster with 500 attack, and its link point is the left. The materials are 1 non-link at Ignista monster. You can only use each of this card's name's first and second effects once per turn. 1. If this card is link summoned, you can add 1 at Ignista Island from your deck to your hand. 2. When a Cyberse monster with 2,300 original attack activates its effect, as a quick effect, you can move this card to your main monster zone it points to. Then you can change this card's attribute to any attribute until the end of its turn. Okay, so the first part of the effect to search for your field spell is always very decent. It directly supports the archetype, so it's designed specifically for that in mind. The second thing is with the secondary effect to be able to move the monster zone means you're able to then shift your monsters around so that you're then able to summon into further link monsters, because sometimes you can be trapped into certain zones, especially in the previous master rule where you had to link monsters before you could essentially extend your extra deck monsters summoning zones. You don't have to do that anymore, so I think this is about six months to a year too late. It would have been much better off had this come years ago, but it's a special effect, and what you're going to do. I like the fact that it's kind of a baby version of at Ignista, and it reminds me a bit like with Utopia Roots is a baby version of Utopia. You and I is a continuous spell card with the effect 1. If a Cyberse monster with 2,300 original attack is special summoned, you can activate one of these effects based on the attributes among the summoned monsters. You can only activate each of the following effects of you and I once per turn per attribute. Earth or water, half the attack of one face-up monster on the field until the end of this turn. Wind or light, negate the effects of one face-up card on the field until the end of this turn. Or fire or dark, special summon 1 at Ignista token. It has to be a Cyberse type dark attribute level 1 with 0 attack and 0 defense. I really like the design of this card. It is quite unique, and I love when they have these different options for different effects. I mean, it reminds me a bit of Ring Kazan. It has like 4 options to it, so you actually get those alternative effects. The more effects a card has, the more chances you have to do things without running any additional support. Of course, you're going to want to go into whatever your situation is based on, but none of these effects are what I would consider to be bad. It is quite unusual that you go for the pairings on those attributes, because typically Earth gets paired with wind, water gets paired with fire, light and dark get paired together, but actually they've completely mismatched everything and made it a little bit more of a jumble, just to create a little bit more chaos and to make things a little bit more unusual. But I think that's fine. The ability to half an attack of a face-up monster is really decent. I know you've got cards like Shrink, or you've got Armored Bee has that effect as well. Gale the Whirlwind is probably best example, which is that Blackwing monster with 1300 attack, which can special summon itself. That's probably the best version because that's a permanent stat reduction, not a temporary one like this is. But, you know, being able to cut your opponent's monsters is really good. Being able to shut down one face-up card, it's not just a monster, it could be a spell or a trap card. It's also quite decent. Maybe your opponent is running some kind of stun strategy. By negating that one effect, you're able to play through it. And of course, token generating is what the Link monsters want to do. People lost their minds once they found out they could use tokens for Link summons. You know, people were buying up scapegoats, you know, all sorts of token generating cards. And, you know, Grind Golem was a thing. So many different examples, and those all became so much more expensive as a result of it. So anything that generates tokens means you're going into more of your Link plays. The next card is Danmari at Ignista. It's a level 6 Dark Attribute Cybers type effect monster, 2300 attack and 0 defense. You can only use each of this card's name's first and second effects once per turn. 1. When an attack is declared involving your at Ignista monster, you can special summon this card from your hand, and if you do, negate that attack. 2. If you control a Link 6 monster as a quick effect, you can banish this card from your field or graveyard, then target one face-up card your opponent controls, negate its effects until the end of this turn. This acts like a bit of a hand trap for the archetype, because firstly, it shuts down an attack which involves an Ignista monster, so you can protect one of them. The secondary effect is actually quite good because your biggest Link monster, the Link 6, is the main boss monster, and being able to shut down your opponent if this card is in the graveyard or the hand means essentially you're protecting that monster a little bit longer. Although it would have been nice in any of your Ignista monsters rather than just a pure Link 6 monster, which is the annoying condition to it. And the final card is Manae Mono. It's a continuous trap card, and the effect is you can only use this card's name's third effect once per turn. 1. Monsters your opponent controls lose 100 attack for each card you control. 2. If you're at Ignista monster battles, your opponent can activate cards or effects until the end of the damage step. And 3. When your Ignista monster is destroyed by battle, you can target one Cybers monster with 2300 attack in your graveyard, except the destroyed monster, and special summon it. Okay, so the first effect isn't really that big of a deal. I liken it to something like Burden of the Mighty. Yes, you could potentially get a few 100 points off their attacks total for all of their monsters, which is fine, based on the cards you control, and actually, to an extent, it's better than Burden of the Mighty. That was introduced back in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. Season 3, Adrian Gecko used it, and it focused too heavily on levels. So you've had Xyz monsters since then, you've had Link monsters. Both don't have levels, so don't lose the attack points based on that effect, whereas this guarantees that all of your opponent's monsters will lose attack points. Of course, the more cards you have, the more attack points they lose. Potentially, they could lose 1,000 attack, but that relies on you having 10 cards, basically your entire field covered in cards. It's not like it's happened, it's maybe 300, 400 points difference each, but it can make the difference between winning or surviving a duel. The secondary effect means being able to shut down your opponent's battle traps and effects is okay, because it's not just the battle traps, it's any effect that can activate during the battle phase. But if your opponent isn't running any of those types of cards, it's not really that big of a deal. It's a nice little bonus. And the third effect is it's nice that it's not when this card is destroyed, but when one of your Ignista monsters is destroyed, that you're then able to bring back another Cybers monster. So you can continually use that effect each and every turn, even though it's a once per turn effect. So it's nice because you're not having to lose that advantage. You're continually bringing things out, and the more you do that, the more you're going to annoy your opponent, the more the resources they're going to use to try and get rid of these cards, and the more likely you are to basically beat them.